What's up, A to Z Sports Nashville? I'm Easton Freeze, Titans beat writer, reporter here with a very special guest. Super cool video for you today. We've got Brian Callahan sitting down with us for a little exclusive postseason conversation. It's been 2-ish weeks since the season ended, and we have heard in some form or fashion from Amy Adams Strunk and Chad Brinker and Ryan Carthon and Burke-ikhine. We've not heard from you though, Brian. So what's up? How's the last 2 weeks of your life been?
It's been busy, but it's been good. So we've been, our coaching staff has essentially been off for since the end of the season. We've had our exit interviews the last week right after the season was over, and I've been here just about every day working. But other than that, coaching side's been pretty quiet right now.
I can imagine, and I can imagine you guys are ready to get past probably the all the off-season technicalities, logistics, get into the draft evaluation portion of things, especially guys like you who enjoy that kind of thing. So, Senior Bowl coming up here. Looking forward to that. We're going to cover as much ground today as possible. And we'll start with some offseason news that I think is the most timely here. One of the biggest questions with all of the things that have happened in the last 2 weeks, I think a lot of people have, is how the team's vision changes now that Rand has been let go. You bring in, obviously, Mike Borgonzi, just recently hired. With Chad now leading the charge for the team from a vision standpoint, does it feel different to you? Are you heading in a different direction?
Everyone's got their own spin on things. Anytime you make a change, especially the general manager spot, it's going to be a little bit different. But what I think about Chad and Chad's vision is disciplined. It's focused. He knows exactly what he wants this process to look like. From a 1 year, 2 years, 5 years standpoint. And that part's exciting. I'm excited about his ability to bring, his vision to life. I think hiring of Mike is a huge asset to us. Mike's been super experienced in kind of every realm of what they've done in Kansas City. I mean, he's been a part of some lean years. He's been a part of championships. I've known Mike for a while, and I'm excited to add him. I think his experience and how he runs the scouting department will be really fun to see. So, the vision doesn't really change for me from when I got here. It's just a matter of how we're acquiring players and what the process is to acquire them.
You say you've known Mike for a while. What's your relationship like? How far do you guys go back?
I would say, it wasn't like him and I are like best buds or anything like that. But, we've competed against each other for a long time. I was in the AFC West from 2010 to 2015. So I saw all those Chiefs teams in those years. And then playing with Cincinnati and seeing the Chiefs in back-to-back AFC championship games and the teams that they've built have been pretty impressive. And so even when I was on the interview circuit, you get talking to people around and you get advice and guys that might be getting GM jobs, all the guys you connect with over the years. And I've had a couple conversations with them, but always been a fan of what they've done in Kansas City and how they've went about their business.
I want to come back to him and the GM search here in a moment, but I don't think fans really know a ton about Chad. They're going to get to know him, I'd imagine, more here shortly, and we'll have some introductory press conference, and we'll hear from him probably. What's your relationship been like with him? Do you think that you guys are aligned in the way that you see the game, the way that you see roster building?
Absolutely. I've been a fan of Chad since I got hired. I think what people start to learn about Chad is he's very disciplined in his approach, what he does and how he does it. He's very thoughtful. He's very thought out. Everything about the way he goes about his business is professional. You can see his experience in the years that he spent in Green Bay. I mean, that's one of the organizations that I think everyone holds to a really high standard as far as their process and how they go about it. And all of those things you see in how Chad goes about his business. And I really enjoy Chad. I think on top of that, I think Chad's a fantastic person. And we've been together, everything we've done here since I've gotten here has been involved with Chad and all the things that he's brought. So nothing really changes on my end for me. All the things that we've done over the last, 12 months, he's been a large part of those things. And again, now it's a little bit, he's more at the forefront now maybe than he was before, but it's not like Chad and I haven't had multiple daily conversations and work through all the things that we work through on a daily basis here. So I think everyone will start to get to know Chad and you'll respect him. I think the GM process, the way that it went and how he managed it and how he interviewed and the detail that he went through to find the right guy, I think was really impressive. And I think that's a slight window into how he operates.
Well, another thing that I think people struggle to understand right now is the utility of this power structure itself, right? Because, and I do think there's probably more clarity now, the way that it is a single ladder down from Amy to Chad to Mike to you. What's your opinion on kind of a unique power structure you guys have in I guess bifurcating the GM responsibilities for what Chad is doing? What's the point?
Well, I think this isn't, I mean, I guess it is a bit unique around the league, but there's been places that have done things like this before. When I was in Denver, John Elway was the president of football ops, and, though we had GM people, we had Brian Sanders at one point there. We had Matt Russell that I think had the GM title. I can't quite recall the titles, but it was a very similar setup. So it's not something that I haven't seen before. There's just so much that goes into these GM jobs nowadays. And it's really challenging for one person to manage all of it and build the roster. And I mean, there's just so much that goes into it that having really two talented, diverse ways of thinking, I think really is an advantage to an organization, the way that we're set up. I mean, Chad's experiences with Mike's experiences and mine, we've all seen championship teams. We've all been to Super Bowls. We've all won one. And I think all of that melds into a pretty good melting pot of ideas and experiences that I think can help us really improve our football team. So, structure-wise, it doesn't really feel much different to me in terms of the day-to-day, but everything we do, we still work together on. Very rarely at any point is anybody, walking up to the draft board and getting their hands slapped down because, no, I'm in charge of this and I'm in charge of that. That doesn't happen. We all work together trying to do the best we can for the organization, and our goal is to build a winning team as quickly as we possibly can.
You have any idea why other teams don't, the more traditional GM setups? Do you feel like you're just ahead of the curve on that? Is it different teams are better off situated differently?
That's hard to say. I think every organization operates from a little bit different, what they see, the organization needs. Sometimes they have other people that do those things and you don't really know it either. There's sometimes their president operates and runs some of the outside peripheral things that the GM doesn't. So I think it varies from organization to organization. I just know that the way that we're set up, I think, is probably you're going to start to see a little bit more of it as these organizations continue to get bigger. The staffs have gotten bigger on both sides, both in personnel and in coaching. And you're seeing also the support staffs getting bigger. You have more security people, you have more operations people, your equipment staff, your training staff, your grounds crew. These are all things that get run in the operation of a day-to-day basis. And there's a lot that goes on. And so you want your GM to focus on building the best roster possible and managing the scouting staff, both the pro and the college, and making sure that we're on the same space and direction on that side. And then there's all the other things that happen on a day-to-day basis that people don't even see and understand. And it's just, these organizations are gigantic. There's a lot of things that go into it. Now the money of the NFL just continues to go up. And these are major, massive jobs that require a lot of attention and a lot of things that people don't see on a day-to-day basis. They just see titles and don't quite understand it. But the operation of the business is intricate and is detailed. And there's a lot of people that are relying on people like Chad and Mike and myself to make decisions and run the day-to-day operation. And so I think it's a pretty cool structure, to be honest. I think it helps everybody do their job to the best of their ability. And so you don't get lost in the weeds, when your GM's not worrying about what the grass looks like on the field. He's more worried about what players are going to draft in the 6th round. I think those things help. It just helps keep everything streamlined and focused. And this is my opinion, but that's just how I've seen it. And I think it's beneficial for us.
I think that's really clarifying for probably a lot of fans, because the past 2 weeks for them, from the outside looking in, it's felt kind of chaotic. It's been tumultuous. There have been some surprising things. The messaging has not been the most encouraging about the future of the team. For you, has there been anything that's happened in the past 2 weeks that I guess maybe shakes your faith a little bit in terms of your ability to succeed with this organization, or has it been normal?
No, it's been normal. And look, I'll just come right out and say that I have a lot of respect for Rand. He's a friend. He believed in me. He invested in me. So I have a lot of positive feelings about Rand, and I'm personally sad to see him go. But I've also been doing this a long time, and That's the way the NFL works sometimes. Coaches, it's funny that coaches see some of these things different than fans do. We're used to change. Guys get let go just about every year, whether it's on a coaching staff, whether it's the head coach. It's just part of our business. It's part of the world that we work in. We choose it, and so we're aware of all the things that are negative about the business, but it is the business, and that's just the way things go sometimes. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, is irrelevant, because the business keeps on going, and we got a job to do. We're trying to build a championship team, and those are the things that happen. And at the end of the day, just like I told every GM candidate that I met with here, the day-to-day, everything that happens in this building, even up through the course of the season, it's not nearly as chaotic as it looks from the outside, and I tell people that all the time. I mean, it's NFL business, but at the end of the day, the coaching staff, the process, the players, the locker room, the building, there's a lot of really good people here, and a lot of people that do their jobs really well. And I'm excited about what's to come, and I think people should be as well. And that's not blowing smoke. That's not trying to be sunshine and rainbows. I get
it's your season tickets now. Yeah.
That's not what I'm trying to do. Look, I can be an eternal optimist as much as anybody, but I just know what I see every day when I walk in here, and I know what kind of people are here. So I think some of the outside noise and some of the perception, I totally understand, and it's part of what the business is. But I think if you could see the day to day, and you could, you guys are around, you and guys in the beat, you guys kind of see the things that happen around here, and there is a lot of good things that go on. And now we got to play a better brand of football. We don't want to be picking number one. That means that your season didn't go very well, and ours didn't. And so we have to find a way to get better. But ultimately, the perception outside is something that I understand, but I'm here every day with the people in the building, and there's a lot of things that give me confidence moving forward.
One of those people that have been around the building, I'd imagine, more in the past couple of weeks is Amy. Can you give fans any more of a window into your working relationship with her? What's it been like all season long, but even in the past 2 weeks, getting to work with her, and maybe talking about where you see this team going, hearing from her where she wants to see it go? What's that been like?
I think it's been consistent. That's the best way I can put it. Our relationship since I've been hired has been consistent. We have conversations. I really enjoy my conversations with Amy. I think that we allow ourselves to have the conversations necessary. And then I enjoy Amy as a person, which I think, fans see, and all of that is who she is. And I'm appreciative of our relationship. And at the end of the day, she has a passion for this team, and she wants this team to be great, and she pours everything she can into it to allow us the resources to do it. So I have a very solid relationship with Amy. I'm excited about continuing that relationship, continuing to grow, because once you go through a season, you kind of go through it. Now we've been through it together, and now those things are hopefully a springboard forward to what's to come, and a lot of hopefully positive and exciting things that are on the horizon.
So shifting back to Chad real quick, I forget, maybe it was with the Tennessean, somebody he spoke to in the wake of the decision. He said that it stuck out to me because it's a funny number. He said you need 7 difference makers on a team. So first of all, why 7? And second, do you have any of those 7 already on your roster?
Yeah, I think we do. That's sort of been one of the things that he's believed in. That's sort of part of that philosophy from Green Bay. It's when you study roster construction, which we all do. We study where money's allocated. We study where the players come from. How do they acquire their players? Those kind of high-end elite players that you need to win a championship is how do they get them? Where do they come from? What rounds are they picked in? So there's a whole sort of market analysis that goes into how championship rosters are constructed. And as you look over time and you feel what those teams look like, that's sort of been the common denominator from those studies where Chad's come from, and it's pretty much affirmed. Like you need those guys at the certain premium positions to be really high end players, so you can make enough impact plays to win games. And we've seen it over the last 2 weekends what that looks like. You can see the difference in those teams and the players that they have. Obviously, quarterback is one of them. You got to have a quarterback that can compete against the Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons and Joe Burrows and all those guys that are out there playing. You got to protect that quarterback, so your tackles are usually premium positions, primarily your left, but anymore you need two of them. Your pass rushers, the guys that affect the quarterback, those are the guys that you have to have, and you have to be able to affect the quarterback. And then usually it's going to be somewhere in your secondary, whether it's a high-end corner or two, or a high-end corner and a safety. Those are the sort of the positions where you have to have impact players, and then the receiver. So everything in the NFL is sort of based in the passing game anyway, even though the rushing game has sort of made a resurgence. But at the end of the day, if you have premium players at premium positions, the corners, the rushers, the quarterback, the tackles, the receivers, usually you're going to put yourself in a pretty good position. And now there's always outliers and there's always exceptions for great players. A Saquon Barkley, a guy that's
Right.
been almost dominant at his position. But those are usually where you're looking. And I think when you look at how teams are constructed, that number tends to be pretty clear. If you can hit to that spot, those seven guys roughly at an elite level, you're going to have a pretty good football team.
Okay, two more newsy things before we can talk more about the team and the future. Number one, where are you at with coaching staff changes? Are there going to be any? Are you set moving forward? Are things in flux?
I would say the best way to put it is things are in flux.
Okay.
This is sort of anymore now that they've pushed all of these job interviews back. The process has slowed down. There's a lot of things that are sort of happening under the current out there in the coaching profession. There's things that are occurring in other teams. There's head coaching interviews. There's staff changes. Those things have been slower, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years now that this process has slowed down some, which is good because it gives you time and space to evaluate your own staff, which I've done. And you have a chance to think through all the different things that are going to happen. And then you see what else is out there. It works a little bit like, best way to put it is it's sort of like free agency as well. It's like what people can we bring in to help upgrade our staff? And my job is to upgrade our coaching staff as best I can with different coaches that are available. And so those things are ongoing. It's nothing has been finalized at the moment, but there's certainly things that are in flux and working through. So I'm sure at some point we'll have a final-ish announcement of what that looks like. But there's a lot of things in the mix right now working.
So what is that point in the offseason where you feel like, okay, by this event or this day, we need to have our coaching staff set, whatever we're going into next year with?
I would say probably by the time we get back to work coaching wise, which is usually that first week in February.
Okay.
Sometime between that first week in February and the Super Bowl is usually when a lot of things start to get finalized, especially for us. We're already established staff. It's not a new staff. We're not hiring, 25 positions. We're looking at a handful of different ones. So, at the end of the day, that's ultimately where I would say is probably close to as final as we'll be, is probably somewhere in that first week of February.
Final question here, at least on this topic. The rounds of interviews that you guys just had for GM, if I'm not mistaken, you were involved in the second round, the in-person.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That's correct.
And I guess just what was that like, that process? I'd imagine very long hours with these guys, maybe some dinners, wining and dining, getting to know guys. It seemed from the outside like the list of 6 guys you brought in, first of all, I was surprised it was that long, frankly. But I was also not, because when you were trying to cut down from 10 to 4 or 5, I was having a hard time figuring out who shouldn't be involved, because these 6 guys all seemed really qualified. Is that how you guys felt in the building?
That's how we felt. Yeah. I mean, it was my role was just a piece of it. I met with all those guys. I probably met with them for roughly, an hour-ish on each guy that came in the building. Some guys I had relationships with and I knew, some guys I'd never met before. So it was really informative for me to get to know some of these guys around the league that I'd heard of, but not actually had a chance to sit down and talk to. But I thought,
were you meeting with them by yourself, or was this a group?
Yeah,
thing?
No, I met with them one-on-one,
Gotcha.
which is good because they're, I one of the things that I think I pride myself on is I do have ability to get along and work and relate with just about anybody. And that part was important because it's a big job with the head coach and the GM and how we communicate and how we operate on a day-to-day basis. And so that's a big part of somebody feeling comfortable enough with the job that has a head coach in place. And, these are important decisions and they're big decisions, but they're ones that ultimately for me is how well can I work with the person? And, to Chad's credit, he brought in, really 6 fantastic candidates. I mean, you could have taken these guys and shook them up in a bag and drew one out and felt great about it. There was all of them were really impressive. They're all experienced in their own ways and been a part of unique situations. And I would say it was a pretty challenging decision at the end of the day is which one was the best one. And ultimately, we landed that Mike was the best one of the guys we brought in. But man, they were impressive group of candidates. Even the ones that we zoomed and didn't bring in, were also really impressive. And all these guys I think that we brought in will be general managers in the near future, perhaps, and likely within the next year or two. These guys are all really, really talented evaluators, really talented personnel people, and good people on top of that. And I was really encouraged by, everyone that came in. I was like, man, I really like that guy. I think these guys can do a great job. And it was a challenging decision, and that's what you hope for when you interview and you bring in good people, is that the decision is challenging and it's hard because every one of them brings qualities that you're looking for. And like I said, they all were really, really highly qualified people for the job, and it was fun to get to talk to them.
Today's video is brought to you by our new friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. A crash can change your life forever, and help is only a click away at bartdurham.com. At Bart Durham, your big truck wreck is their fight for justice. They've been in business since 1975, so they have half a century of experience dealing with all kinds of wrecks. They're locally operated here in Capitol View, Nashville, but they can fight for anyone in Kentucky or Tennessee who's been in an auto accident. Attorneys are available to meet with you wherever is most convenient, including virtually, and you can reach the Bart Durham team 24/7 to get your legal questions answered. Just call 615-242-9000 and let Bart Durham help today. All right, let's move past the news and talk a little bit about the actual football. And let's talk about hindsight first, and then we can look to the future. The past season, obviously, not what you want. Is there something that comes to mind for you? Maybe it's one thing, maybe it's a couple of things. If you could go back and do them again differently, is there anything like that for you in your head where you wish you had done something differently this year?
It's probably not that. It's probably not wishing I would have done something different. There were just multiple learning points across the season that you don't know until you go through it, and you don't understand some of the parts of what the job is until you've done it. And I think I kind of equated that at the end of the season press conference when, it's like having kids. It's like you can read all the books and you can talk to all the people that have kids, and everyone's going to give you their share of advice and all their thoughts they have on it, and a lot of it's really good. But until you're in there in the mix, raising kids and changing diapers and waking up all night long, you kind of figure it out as you go on some things, regardless of the amount of advice you have. And that's sort of how I felt about it, where those things that I'm very prepared for, very aware of, and as the season goes along, things come up, and you learn lessons, and you try to be as reflective as you can. You take notes. I got books full of notes that I've taken over the course of the season on things as little as, maybe I shouldn't have left 15 minutes in between meetings and lunch before practice. Maybe we needed 30. It's as small as things like that, and sometimes as big as major decisions that you have to make over the course of the season. And so I wouldn't say I have things that I would have done differently. I just know there's things that I certainly have to do better, and a lot of that is going to be dealing more with the totality of the team. I have team meetings and I deal with everybody and I have conversations, but for me, especially this offseason, I think just being more present and available defensively with those guys, being more involved in their meetings and in their process so they can understand me a little bit better, because the offensive guys see me every day. I install, I teach, I'm in front of them every day. All the things that you do on offense, I'm a part of, and I run those meetings. And I have my team meetings, right? So I have, a team meeting on Monday, a team meeting on Wednesday, a team meeting on Friday, and a team meeting on Saturday. So I'm up in front and dealing with the team. I'm always having conversations with guys, but I just think for me, being more intentional about my involvement, particularly in the offseason now, with the defensive players and the special teams players and both of those processes, I think is something that I can do a better job of, certainly as we move into the next phase. And I feel so much better about it now because now I know what's coming. I have a better feel. There's not a lot of new now. It's all sort of laid out. I've been through an off season. I've been through a training camp and a regular season. And so I have a better feel for what I can do better and where I can insert myself and do a better job in those areas. So I actually feel way better now than I did a year ago. You know, I've got a very clear vision for what it's supposed to look like, and where I can be better, where I can serve better as a head coach. And then I know what I did well, and so those things I can lean into too. And now we've had a whole year with the staff together, right? That's another thing that I think gets overlooked, is now we've all been to battle a bit together. They know what to expect from me. I know what to expect from them, and I know where they can all be better. And so those are all the conversations we have, and we try to improve as best we can and tighten our process, and inject new where new is necessary. And sometimes not everything needs to change. You know what I mean? There is things that we did well. There is things that I feel good about as a head coach, things that I liked that we did, things that I feel good about my strengths as a head coach. So it's a good balance. I mean, there's definitely things that I have to improve on. But I wouldn't ever say it's always challenging to look back on a year and say that I wish I would have done this differently, you know, because it all sort of happens for those reasons that are necessary. You learn a lot because of it. And, you know, but again, to say that there's not things to improve on would certainly be wrong. There's a lot of things that I got to do a better job of.
I think that's totally fair. I understand that. Can I run two things by you that I think are the most common things that fans would want to hear your thoughts on in terms of going back and doing them differently? The first one, relatively inconsequential, but it was just a bugaboo for people throughout the year. Playing Burks as long as you did over NWI and then him eventually emerging. Is that something that you look back on differently?
You know, it's hard because you see a guy like Trey who's got talent, and our job as coaches is to try to get the most out of the talent, and you try to give opportunities to improve. And one of the things that Trey did that was important for him is that, you know, he came back in phenomenal shape at training camp. He was dialed in. He knew what to do, and again, he's a first round pick, you know, and those guys that are first round picks and have talent, oftentimes are afforded a longer opportunity than others, and that's just the nature of the business in the NFL. That's how it works. You know, you get your picked high, you have your high draft pick, you're invested in, and we're a new staff, and so we were trying to get the best out of the talent that was at hand, and you know, Trey did a good job, and there was things that I probably look at, and could we have gotten Nick involved more often earlier? Yeah, there's certainly things that I think we could have done to involve him earlier. And I told him that at the end of the year that I wish that I recognized his value quicker. And I think that he has a huge value in terms of what he does in the run game. He can play all three positions. He makes contested catches. He's big. He's strong. Those are things that we could use. And I told him after the season that I wish I would have found a role for him earlier on. And whether that role was big or small, you know, obviously things changed when we traded D-Hop, you know, and then Trey got hurt. So then it was sort of thrust into a position that he wasn't in at the beginning of the year, right? He ends up being our really number two receiver, number two and a half between him and Tyler, depending on what personnel group we're in. And so now he's thrust and he has, you know, triple the opportunities he would have had at the early part of the year. And he answered the bell. He played really well for us, and he became a valuable part of our offense. And he's a guy that you'd love to have return, you know, and those are things for, you know, as the upcoming weeks and free agency begins. But I do think that there was a role for Nick earlier. But again, you're juggling, trying to get to know everybody, trying to get to know how they fit, having Calvin, having D-Hop, and then you got Trey. So there's three. And so where does the fourth play? And then you had Tyler. So we had some moving parts early on where we're trying to get guys involved. And so I never really got a great feel for what Nick could bring. And the opportunity, because of injury and trade, put him in a spot where now I fully realize what Nick's capable of and what his value is. And so I would say it's probably because it's just we're trying to get to know the team better. And again, you don't really know your football team until you play. All that preseason and training camp and OTAs, you have thoughts and ideas, but you don't know until you play another team for real.
Right.
And so that's what I would say. I would say that there was knowing now what I if I knew this earlier in the season, could I have found some things to get Nick involved in the process? Yeah, certainly I could have, and he's deserving of it as well.
The second one, we could probably, based on the conversations I've had with Stonehouse in the locker room, we could probably spend the next hour on this, and we would lose every listener. The special teams situation. How do you sum up the year of special teams, which funny enough, I mean, you know this. I think a lot of fans don't know this. The final quarter of the season, they were fixed pretty much. Just nobody cared at that point.
Right.
When they did care, it was a disaster. So what was the learning curve like there? Would you have done something differently in hindsight on the special teams?
I think what's interesting about the special teams is we sort of had two really catastrophic plays in the first 2 weeks of the season.
Mm-hmm.
You get a punt block for a touchdown in Chicago. That was a matchup issue. That was they had a big body on Gibby, who was a smaller body. It was a mismatch, and that gave up pressure and a block. And I think Stonehouse coming off a pretty catastrophic injury on top of it. Just like any player, usually when you have those type of injuries, they're really 2-year injuries, until you really feel like you're back to normal. And so Stonehouse came back really fast on top of it. It just felt unsettled early in the year. I think some of that was residual from what's gone on in the past here. It's been a special teams seem to have a bit of a dark cloud over it as
oh, buddy. Yeah. Yes.
So, those things happen. And we were trying to and then all of a sudden you come out in week 1 and you have a disastrous play on a punt block. And then we come back against the Jets and we give up a hi-hat rush on a 4-man rush on a punt safe where the ball gets a hand on it. And then in Miami, we get a ball and, Calais Campbell gets through there. And again, I think some of it was just finding the right mix of people, particularly on the punt team. And I think as we found that over the course of the season, it really settled down and we turned into a pretty dang good punt coverage unit over the last half of the season. When we added Justin Hardy at gunner, the emergence of Bryce Oliver at gunner, two guys that really made an impact on the coverage unit. And then some of our young players came along, started seeing more from James Williams. Cedric Gray was playing more. I thought Chig and Josh Wiley came on in the special teams coverage units really over the course of the season. So we got better over the year. We had young players playing more, and those young players got better. So yeah, there was some things. We made some pretty catastrophic mistakes. I mean, ultimately probably cost us for sure. The first game was a huge part. And then, the Detroit game was really challenging. We gave up too many returns, too many yards, both in the kickoff and the punt phase. And that was really hard for us to overcome. And so I would say early in the year, as the year went on, we got better. But we had really catastrophic games that really stood out. That made the microscope and the heat on the special teams intense. And look, rightfully so. We didn't play well enough on special teams early in the season, and we needed to. And credit to Colt and credit to those guys on those units that really, as the season went on, bought into it and really started playing better football over the course of the season. And that's what you look for. You're looking for improvement. And it was better. Those things that were really encouraging. I thought Luke Gifford played at damn near Pro Bowl level as a special teamer. I thought he was fantastic. But those guys did a better job. We put better players in, younger players that really helped settle that unit down. And again, encouraged by some of the way we finished. Was it good enough over the course of the season? No, it wasn't. And we have to get better there. We settled down to the point where we weren't making any major errors. Mm-hmm. We weren't losing games. We weren't giving up returns. We weren't turning the ball over. Now you got to get to a point where the special teams can affect the game in a positive manner. We had a couple really nice punts down inside the 10 over the course of the back half of the season. But now we got to find. We've been close on a couple of blocks. I think James was close on 3 or 4 different times on getting blocks. So those are the plays we have to make to now swing games and momentum in our favor. And that's the goal for us moving forward is we got to find more impactful spots on special teams. I think, for me to sit here and tell you that I'm just okay with being solid on special teams is not it. I want to be a top 10 special teams unit. I think we have players that can do that for us. And, we got to find ways to affect games in that third phase, because when you look around, that's how teams win, and we got to do a better job there. But I think from start to finish, you saw improvement. You saw guys step up. You saw young players play better as the season went along. So things to be, I think, encouraged about, and then definitely things that we have to be better at if we want to win, more than 3 games next year.
Slightly different version of this question. Do you have a biggest what if from this season? something that you think if this had gone differently, the butterfly effect maybe would have made things look a lot different?
Yeah, I think those first two games are really critical. You know, we go up 17-0 on the road against Chicago. That's a game that we got to close out and find a way to win. And instead, we find a way to lose. And now you have momentum. You're about to win your first game on the road in an environment that was fantastic. I mean, the Bears were excited about Caleb Williams. It's their opener. The place was rocking. It was a great environment. And we come out and we jump to the 17-0 lead, playing fantastic defense. We played really good on offense in that first half. And then it all sort of starts with that pump block for a touchdown. And then we have that crazy turnover that Will had at the pick six at towards the end of the game. That it was just too much to overcome. You know, when you're a team that's fighting for sort of every inch along the way, to give up major, massive momentum swinging plays like that is really difficult to overcome. And I just think about it, had we won the Chicago game and then had we won the Jets game, which we were in position to do, you know, we had the ball with what, 3-4 downs at the end of the game on the 8-yard line. You know, those are the games that you have to win, especially early in the season. And the what if part for me is, what if we win those two games and we go 2-0 and we play a good Green Bay team and maybe we don't win that game and you go to Miami and now you're 3-1 instead of 1-3 in two very winnable games. Those aren't games that I look back on and say, you know, oh man, they weren't out of reach. Those were games that we had potential to win. The Green Bay game, we did not. Green Bay, for all intents and purposes, kicked our ass, and that's what happens sometimes. And but those first two games, those were games that we had very, very ample opportunity to win, and we didn't. And I think had you win those two games, and let's just say you go 2-2 into the bye, very, very different feeling. But certainly if you hit 3-1 into the bye, now you got some momentum. Now there's a little bit more excitement. There's a little bit more belief. And look, that to me is it's not the turning point of the season, but it certainly put us behind the 8 ball in terms of a hole to climb out of. And instead of at least being around 500, now we're trying to climb out of we're 1-3 in the bye and we're trying to climb out of it. We drop another one, we go to 1-4, and now it feels really bad, right? To me, those two games I think is a really critical part of the season. And I think that's one of the things that I look at as a head coach is how do I get us in position to start faster? You know, the way that these seasons go is if you start fast and you can get out at least into a manageable record to start the first month of the year, now you're in a better position to be in striking distance as the season goes along. And ultimately we weren't. And, you know, when we look up and we are 1-4, 1-5, and then we face a tough stretch of teams that are, you know, some are still playing at this moment, and on the road too, on top of it, and still go up to Buffalo on the road, and we're in a 10-7 game in the third quarter. You know, we go to Detroit on the road, and we're in a game in the first half. We're sort of going back and forth and answering score for score. And again, special teams was a major issue, and then our red zone defense was a major issue. And but again, we're in those games. We just can't competitively sustain them for the course of it. When we start making the errors that we make, you know, we turn the ball over in Buffalo, we turn the ball over in Detroit, we played poor on special teams. You're never going to beat good teams like that on the road with those sort of mistakes. I think we can all look at the playoffs and look at it and watch right now. I think the winning teams, I think it's
4 for 4.
It's 4 for 4, and I think none of the teams that won didn't turn the ball over, and the teams that didn't sort of massively turn the ball over, you know, in really big spots. So the turnover margin is a huge part of winning games in the NFL, and I think everybody knows that. But we turned it over 34 times, which is the worst in the league, and that's going to not do you many favors when it comes to winning games. But I think that at the end of the day, that those first two games were sort of a critical spot in terms of flipping the momentum of the season.
A lot of people have no idea what we're talking about. The divisional round winners all produced on offense less in terms of yards than the losers.
Yep.
But the losers all turn the ball over a ton, and that's how you lose games. Well, a big part of the reason why you lost those first two games was quarterback play. So let's talk a little bit about quarterback here. So when you look back on you come in, you have this initial belief in Will and what he can be for you. The way that you talked about him throughout the offseason, maybe the messaging and the setup for him to be the guy. Are you surprised it didn't work out? And do you wish you had done any of that differently?
No, I think it's one of those things that you just, Will's in a new system, a new way of doing things. A lot of, everything about Will in the offseason portion was encouraging in the sense that he was getting a new system down, handling the verbiage, the play calls, the process, the huddle. All that was good. You see Will's physical talent. He's big and strong and tough. He can throw the ball. And I thought he had a pretty strong training camp. And I think when you watch how he started the Chicago game, that's what I saw. That's what I thought we were capable of being. And even in the Jets game, he did some good things as we moved the ball down the field and against a good defense, especially at that time. I mean, they were damn good early in the season when they were healthy. And we
best
moved the ball
in the league when they fired Saleh, which changed quickly.
Yeah, and that's who they were. That's who they were the last couple of years. I mean, it's a tough defense, and Chicago was a good defense. So we played two good defenses early, and there was some things about how he operated that was encouraging. And then, I think the offensive line play affected him. We weren't good enough up front, so it takes a ton of hits, takes a ton of sacks, and then it sort of spirals from there. And ultimately, when you win 3 games, nothing was good enough, but certainly we weren't good enough at the quarterback spot over the course of the season to be in position to win more games than 3.
Yeah. So I guess in hindsight, is there a little bit of square peg round hole with Will? Do you feel like the way that he plays quarterback was ever or is ever going to be a great fit with the way that you want to play offense?
Well, at the end of the day, it's my job to find a way to fit that the right way.
Sure.
And we did things that I tried to play as many strengths as Will had, and some of that's the deep play action, 3-level throws, things where you got, but the problem with that is now you got to hold the ball, and so we were in a little bit of a juxtaposition of trying to maintain some of those deep down the field throws, the play action where you got time to sort of see things develop versus having to get the ball out, and having to play a style of offense that relies on timing because we don't have a lot of time. And so how do we best get the ball out of our hands? And that's probably not, what Will's strengths are. Will's, not a precision timing passer at this point, and he's a young player. Those are the things you develop over time. But that's where we were in a bit of a pickle, is that we're trying to protect the line and trying to make sure we get the ball out so we don't take negative plays. And you're mixing that with what Will does well, which is throw the ball down the field. And it takes time to get down the field. You have to protect to get down the field. And I thought we did at times a really nice job, and then at other times it was not nearly good enough. And that to me is the biggest difference, is that we were trying to deal with a couple of different issues. Again, not just Will in terms of what he does and what he does well, but we were sort of caught in between. And I think that did Will a bit of a disservice too, to not be able to play to his strengths. So again, not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, if you will. It was more trying to manage where our deficiencies were offensively and try to best put us in position to have success. And is that necessarily Will's strengths at this moment? No, Will's strengths is being able to get down the field and throw balls deep and deep sail routes and post routes and comebacks and things like that. And we had to manage both of those things at the same time, which I think was challenging both for us offensively and for Will.
This pertains to Will, but it's also just a general question. When you misevaluate a player, how does that, as an evaluator, how does that affect how you look at the position going forward? Is it something where you maybe have to guard against swinging too far the other way? Does it radicalize you against certain things? How does that affect your ability to move forward and find somebody that will work for something?
Well, I think you got to find. I think you're looking more for particular traits, and one of the biggest ones that I see right now, and the ones that good quarterbacks I've been around is, it's going to sound a little bit strange, but what's their nervous system like? What is it? What do they look like when things break down? How do they operate when the pocket is muddy? How do they operate under critical duress and critical pressure? Those are the things that I look at. And how does their brain essentially respond? How does their body respond to those stressors? I think a really good example of what incredible poise and calmness looks like is just you watch Jaden Daniels play.
First name that came to my mind when you said
the moment's never too big for him.
Yeah.
Pressure never rattles him. He's efficient in his movement. He's efficient in his delivery. That's kind of what I mean by that. And look, Jaden is turning out to be what might be an incredibly rare prospect that, I would say probably, look, he was taken second overall. So like nobody missed on him. You know what I mean?
Right.
They knew he was a good player, but I'm just saying he was, I think he's exceeded whatever expectations a lot of people maybe had of him. And it's been kind of cool to watch as a fan of quarterback play. But his poise is incredible. And that's what you have to have. And then you watch the great players in our league. And I mean, you look at Mahomes and Burrow and Allen and Lamar. I mean, you watch these guys play ball, Stafford. There's something about how they operate. And like I said, their nervous system is a huge part of that. And then there's three things that I always look at, and it's decision-making, timing, and accuracy. That's quarterback play in the NFL. And you have to be able to, when those moments come where you have to throw the football and everyone in the stadium knows you have to throw the football, can you do it? Can you make those throws in those big moments? And that's what separates, I think, all the quarterbacks in the league, the great ones from the guys that are just good. And that's what you look for, is how does their nervous system work under pressure, and can they make good decisions? Can they throw on time? And most importantly, are they accurate? And I think you see that in the quarterbacks that are all still playing right now. But that's how I look at the position, and I think those are the most important things you look for when you're looking at it.
Man, that is such a big one, and you can't really say it, so I'll say it. I think Titans fans are really hungry for somebody whose nervous system is more on the positive side of things than on the negative side, and the panic and the ability to clutch up a little bit when it's time to do so. So that is, I'd imagine, probably at the top of your list in terms of finding somebody going forward, which I'll ask you more about here at the end of the interview. But here's a big one that I think a lot of people want to hear your thoughts on. So by the end of the season, we all seem to be on the same page that it's just a bad roster. It's just a flawed team. You need more pieces than you have. It's just not good enough, right? But when we flash back to the summer and you read the things that people like me were writing and talking about and listen to your quotes at the podium in August, and it seemed like the roster had really big potential and we all thought there was something here. So were we more wrong then, or are we wrong now?
I think the truth is always somewhere in the middle. I do think that at full health, in training camp in particular, I thought we had a roster that was competitive. Now, what does that mean? That's not for me to put numbers on, but I thought that, again, do you win those two first games early in the year, and now you're 2-2, you're 3-1, and you're in that, you're kind of scratching at that 500 mark early on. That's what I thought we were capable of, is being a competitive football team in those games, and I think we saw that. One of the things that we certainly still had holes. I think every roster has holes. We had spots that we needed to be better at, and you can't fill every hole in one cycle, which for us was one cycle. We thought we added pieces that were needed, particularly in the interior defensive line, at corner. Added a receiver that had explosiveness. That was something that was very much necessary. Added a core piece at center, added a foundational piece at left tackle. And then added some guys that are more role player style players, but fit, what we needed in Sebastian Joseph Day and Kenneth Murray and Quandre Diggs. Those guys filled some spots for us that we needed, those kind of players, some just steady, consistent players in those places. So, I thought that we had the potential. Again, it's, you got to go prove it, but we had the potential to be a pretty competitive team. I think when you look at 34 turnovers and you look at the amount of negative plays we had in terms of penalties, both offensively, defensively, and on special teams, everybody had their hand in it at different moments. And the sacks were a part of that too. And we had these kind of gigantic negative play swings that really, for us, I think were more indicative of not necessarily a poor roster, but we didn't play well enough in certain spots. And again, I'm not saying we had a roster that could go win a Super Bowl tomorrow. I just thought we should have and could have played and coached better than we did over the course of the season. So, like I said, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I thought we had the right people and pieces, but again, you add in all those factors of what happened when we actually played the games. We didn't do a good enough job, and so again, I'm still optimistic with another cycle of adding players, both in the draft and in free agency, of adding the right ones with the right makeup. That we have a chance again to build a team that should be competitive, and that's what you want. We got to eliminate the turnovers, and we got to ultimately got to have better quarterback play over the course of the season too. That was an obvious hindrance for us as the season went along. We didn't get good enough from that spot, didn't get good enough from the special teams, and weren't good enough in the red zone keeping people from scoring. So everybody had a hand in it, but as far as personnel goes, I think that we got to add the right pieces to be a competitive football team. But, I think it was sort of the worst case scenario as the season went along in terms of the turnovers and the negative plays that happened. Injuries caught up with us as the season hit towards the end, lost some kind of key contributors. And I think when we're healthy, I felt good about it coming out of training camp. And again, felt good about where Will was at. And I think early in the year, just had a bunch of negative things happen, kind of like the special teams were just sort of snowballed on us, and we were just trying to recover at that point. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I'm confident that we can get the right players in with the ones we already have, and find ourselves in a competitive season again.
Well, kind of a side note there, a quote that a lot of us came back to over and over was Rand I think it was last summer, saying that the front office checked all the boxes, that you guys gave them a list of what you needed, at least offensively.
Mm-hmm.
Was right tackle not on that list? What was that, a misevaluation of what you had in house, and you thought you could get better than you had? Was that we just couldn't quite, you didn't feel like you had the resources to go and get a satisfactory answer there?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all that.
Okay.
I think we were hopeful that between the guys that we had in house, there'd be someone that would compete and rise to the top. And that there was options potentially to improve it in free agency. But again, it's hard to find tackles in free agency. There's just not a lot of them that get free, and then when they do, they cost a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember exactly what the market was at the time in the free agency, but we certainly felt like we would have somebody that could rise up and be at least serviceable, and ultimately that wasn't the case. We didn't get good enough play. Again, particularly early, I think Nick Petit actually ended up settling in and playing okay as the season went along. But early on, it was rough. I mean, we had a rough time against some good pass rushers, and even ones that weren't that good, we still had a rough time with them, and that was disappointing. And we kind of tried every possible way to see who could rise up, and no one.
We know.
Yeah, no one.
Who's the flavor of the week this week is what we got to at some point. Fair to say that's going to be near the top of the list of needs to address this offseason?
Yeah, okay. we have to address, we still got to keep building our offensive line. I think all the good teams, you look at them all playing right now, they all got fronts, on both sides of the ball. And we have to continue to add pieces on both sides, both the offensive line and the defensive line. We still need rush help. We still need right tackle. Those are all things that I think everyone sees, and we see as well, that those are sort of priorities and areas of need for us to continue to try to improve. And like I said, the best teams playing right now affect the quarterback up front on defense, and they protect it on offense. And you can, statistically, certainly, we didn't do either one of those at a level that's probably good enough for us to win more games. And right now, that's a big area for us to improve.
I've got 3 questions for you about looking ahead to offseason, free agency, draft. But first, I want to ask you one thing about just being a first-time head coach, and you've addressed it a little bit. Mm-hmm. What are some of those biggest things that you maybe had to learn the hard way that you are looking forward to tweaking a little bit going forward? And I guess a part of that is, a lot was made about you being a first-time coach and a first-time play caller. And we asked you too many times this year about, is that hard? Is it difficult?
Yeah.
Like full transparency. Was there times when it was a little bit difficult to juggle all of the newness? And do you feel more equipped to do it now than you did a year ago?
I feel more equipped now because I got 17 games of calling under my belt too. I never felt overwhelmed by that part of it, and I felt like that part was actually easy enough for me to handle. That was the part that, the scheme part and the offensive part to me is the part that I'm the most comfortable. Like that's my comfort zone. And coaching the quarterbacks is my comfort zone. Offensive football is. And so those things never felt overwhelming. Now,
so what was the hard part?
Well, the hard part is the things that I spend the most time with are, messaging and what am I saying to the team? What is the message for the week? I think one of the things I definitely have to do a better job as the head coach is continuing to show, over the course of the training camp and offseason program into the season is what, how do I best exemplify what we're looking for, and then what's acceptable and what isn't. And there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And it's part of coaching, but there's just that part of it. I think I got to do a better job of as the head coach in terms of, what I'm doing with the team and when. But I never felt the overwhelming at all with the process of the offensive football. Now I got really good people that help. I got guys that I know do a really good job, and the guys unsung heroes, I'm sure we can get to at some point. But I got guys that are really good at their jobs and really help the process and keep it on track and allow me to do head coaching things. And then when I get ready to do offensive stuff, I can do that too. So I think a lot gets made of it. There is an element of play calling that you need experience to get better at it every time you do it. Just like I'm sure every time you walk out and you interview, you know what I mean? Every interview you have, you get better. You ask different questions, you ask more probing questions.
If we did this 3 years ago, it'd be a train wreck. We wouldn't have been able to publish it. Your team would have said, no, this is not going out. Bad things. Yeah.
So that's kind of my point, is that there's every time you do it, you got better. And I felt better and more comfortable every game that went on. Every time I went through the process every week, that part I felt good about. And, the game management part is thankfully I have good people with that too, but that part is something you learn as well as you're calling plays and communicating all the things that happen over the course of a game, timeouts, go for it decisions. All those things are, I thought we were pretty well organized in those departments, but it's a lot. That part is a lot, and I said, thankfully I have two people that really help with that process that we could talk about at some point. But, I don't look back and feel like that part was ever too much. I really don't.
So you're not giving up play calling?
No.
Okay. No. This has been speculated, Brian.
Yeah, I know. I get it. I mean, everything gets speculated about when you win, when you win 3 games. And
is he going to step down willingly? I mean, who knows? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, everything.
I don't see that. I don't see the play calls being handed over anytime soon. I mean, I'm just starting to feel the groove a little bit, man. Why would I give it up?
So that messaging, could you feel it being better received throughout the season as you tinkered with it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what makes head coaching hard is saying the right things at the right time, having the right message at the right spot. That's something I spend a ton of time thinking about. What would make the most impact? What do I need to talk about? What do I need to address? What does the team need at this moment? And that's the head coaching part to me. That what do we need for practice? Do we need to walk through on Wednesday? Do we need the mental break? Do we need to practice more? Do we need to have, we used up all of our padded practices, but it's a matter of, those are the things that the head coaching part that you don't have any manual for, is dealing with frustrations. Players get frustrated about things, whether it's role, whether it's their lack of production and why they don't have it, and how come we can't get more of it. Those are all the conversations you have with all different guys across the team. And how do you message the right way at the right time? How do you keep things progressing? How do you keep the standard going? How do you, in the midst of a losing season? And that was the most challenging part for me as a head coach is, you get to a certain point where I've been places where the head coach, starts to kind of address the team less because things aren't going well. And so they just sort of tend to take a step back. And I was very intentional about, nope, every opportunity I get, I'm getting up in front of the team again. And whether they want to hear me or not, I'm getting up there again. And there was never at any point was I going to allow, a poor season to deter me from continuing to build the foundation that I expect and the foundation that we want and what we want the players to look like and feel like and play like and the culture of the building and all those things. That's the head coaching part, if that makes sense. Those are the things that are part of head coaching. And I think those are the things that I got better at as the year went along and I got more comfortable with. And as you get to know your team better, which again, you don't know your team until you play, you don't know what they're about until you play. And I got to know our team better and better as the year went on. And I felt like I was able to be effective in that messaging at the right times. And, I think it was the best way to say that, you asked, did it work? Was it good enough? Ultimately you got to say that there was things that were good. And again, you look at the wins and losses and know that wasn't good enough. So what can I do better? But I think one thing you did see is a team of guys that if you walked out to practice in week 15, I don't think you would have sensed anything different about our record in the way that they went about their work. The way that they came into the building, the way that they would come into meetings, the way that we practiced. Those are all things that were really encouraging because they never got deterred by it and they came to work. They were professional. And so some of that has to do with the messaging. Some of that has to do with the people. And I think there was some good things when it came to that.
So you keep alluding to it. Full disclosure to the listener. This was the question that I sent you ahead of time because I wanted you to think about this.
Yeah.
And this is not to diminish anybody you don't mention. We know the main players, the guys that we talk to, Denard and Nick, but who on the staff is or who are those guys that are doing the things that we don't see, the most important meat and potatoes to your staff that without these guys, things would not function as well as they do around here?
Yeah, these are the questions I enjoy.
Okay.
I get to talk about people that really make an impact for us and really do great work. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, how critical Nick's role is. I think people don't understand for a head coach that calls the plays, for Nick Holtz, what he does on a day-to-day basis in terms of keeping the process moving, meeting with the staff, managing the staff, kind of setting the table for me as the week goes along. And then I come in and interject where I need to. Those are really, really critical things to have moving forward. And I know everyone looks like, what does he do, right? Doesn't call the plays, he's offensive coordinator. What does that even mean? Well, there's a whole management part of being a coordinator that is really critical. And Nick does a fantastic job with that. The communication between me and the staff and getting the game plan rolling and keeping it rolling. Because I get pulled away for a lot of different things over the course of a week. And I can't be in every single meeting every single time on offense. And so I rely on Nick. And there's a huge trust factor that goes into that. And he got better and better and better as the year went along. And man, he's a huge part of our ability to function offensively as an offensive staff because he does such a great job of managing all of those things and setting the table for me when it's time. Really can't say enough about what that role means and how good he is at it for me. Even though it's not as sexy and exciting as what people, expect from a coordinator, those are the things that nobody sees. And I think that's really important. I think we have a young, I think Bo Hardigree does a great job as well, our quarterbacks coach, and what he brings, his expertise and knowledge, both schematically and with the quarterbacks, is really critical. But the guy that brings probably the most unsung hero-ness is Peyton McCollum, who I think people are starting to see a little bit of. He's going to go coach the quarterbacks down to East West.
Yes, he is.
But he is sort of like,
by the way, if people are wondering which quarterbacks, yeah, I mean, also some others, right? Max Brosmer, Brady Cook, exciting.
Yeah, there's some guys that we got to take a look at.
Right.
But it's now he gets hands-on experience with him for a week of coaching them and teaching them and interacting. So it's great for him personally, for his development. It's great for us to have, one of our people with sort of boots on the ground in that game. And but he is a machine. And what I mean by that is the amount of work that he does sort of behind the scenes of keeping things organized for practice and cards for practice and breakdown. And, the quality control coaches, on every side of the ball are they're sort of your lifeblood, and no one really understands what they do or how they do it. But I will say this, it when you don't have a really good one. Everybody feels the effect of it because things aren't done the way they need to be done. But when you have a really good one, the way the process works is almost seamless because they just handle things. One of the things the quarterbacks joke about all the time is when things come up, they just start yelling to each other, just handle it. And when you got guys that can handle it, whatever comes up, they can solve problems, they can fix things. They don't need anybody to tell them what to do. They just do it. They can anticipate problems. He is one of the best ones I've been around when it comes to handling it, and being on top of it and making sure everyone has what they need. He's a fantastic young coach. And he'll get an opportunity to coach here sooner than later, but for what he does and how he does it, he's invaluable to our process, I think. And no one's going to ever give him that credit probably except for me publicly, because that's just not things that people care about as much. But man, he's really, really, really good at what he does, and he's a tremendous asset to us on offense. I think the other guy that doesn't get any real shine, but deserves it, is Rob Reeder and Scott Cohen, those two guys together. But Rob is our game management guy on game day. He's the one that puts all the situational stuff together. He runs our coordinator meeting on Saturday mornings, where we talk about how we're going to play the game and our decision-making models for the game and all that stuff. He is on top of it, man. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. When I got here, I met with Rob. He's kind of in a dual role, and he was in pro personnel, but he was doing some kind of scouting report stuff for the coaching staff. And I sat down with him for 30 minutes when I first got here, and he just blew me away. I mean, I was like, this guy's one of the smartest people I've ever met. We got to find a role for him. And so basically he had no experience in the game management role. And I just said, hey, look, I think you're suited perfectly for this role. I think you have the wherewithal to handle it. I'd like you to just learn how to do it. And he kind of went crazy in the off season. He basically memorized the rule book. He knows every rule inside and out. He watched all the replays and when to challenge and how to challenge and what's challengeable, what's a good challenge, what's not. And then all the actual management part of it, the fourth down decision-making models, how to communicate with me, which is really the biggest thing on game day is when and where I get communication, timeout usage, when to take them. He's just on top of everything for me on game day. And look, at the end of the day, everybody in the league has one, and you always know which teams have good ones. You can see it. You can see their process. You can see how they manage. You know exactly which teams do it the right way. And I think I would say there was very rare situations where we missed or mismanaged an actual situation over the course of the game, whether it be timeout usage and situationals, go for it, when to go for it. I thought we did a really nice job of at least having our plan. It may not be what everybody else wants, but our plan was generally pretty tight. And Rob's a big reason for that. And I think he does a great job communicating on game day. And that's one of those roles that I think is becoming more and more important as we're seeing across the league. If you have a really good guy on game day that can communicate with you, it's critical, man. It's as critical as any coordinator. They are a coordinator in a sense. You know what I mean? They're a game management, clock management coordinator. And you need those guys, and I need them. I'm very aware of situations. I understand it. But in the moment, especially when you're calling plays and you're doing all those things, that guy, man, that's a huge hire that, and I think Rob has risen to the occasion. He's gotten better and better as the year went along. So the best way, he's a rock star, man. He's fantastic at his job.
To go back to Peyton real quick, just I think people are interested in his role that he's going to have in the Shrine Bowl coming up this week, next week, soon.
Friday.
Yeah. So is he somebody that it would be fair to say you guys, and I guess the front office more importantly, values their opinion when he comes back and gives you the rundown of what the week was like with Shedeur specifically, because obviously he's somebody you guys have to spend a lot of time focused on the next couple of months.
Correct.
Is his voice going to be valued in that way?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I think when you get to a certain point in your career, and it's kind of happened, I guess the best way I can put it is like, I see some of myself and Peyton in his journey and how he went about it. When you're kind of a long time quality, I spent 6 years in various quality control roles, and you got to earn people's trust. And I think that's what Peyton has done is his knowledge, his work ethic earns trust. And I trust what he has to say. I trust his opinion. Those are things that when he says something, it's very well researched, it's thought out. It's informed. And I think that's what he's done is earn that respect and that trust, and given the opportunity to work with those guys and have an opinion, and he'll be a part of that process, certainly.
All right, we just got 3 questions left, and we're already over on time. So you know what?
We're all good.
You set the pace here. Looking ahead.
Yep.
First question, just kind of a check-in. Where we are, it is currently January 20th. Where is everybody in the building at in the scouting process right now? You talked as soon as the season ended about how the coaching staffs, we haven't really paid any attention to this. We're just going to start soon. Front office done some, but they haven't had their big meetings, certainly not setting any kind of board. Where are you guys today, about a week ahead of the Senior Bowl?
I would say the scouting process is moving along. They have their December meetings. So all of our road scouts are all, that's kind of the character reads. That's the beginning process where they're sort of stacking some of the character reads. They're starting to put the guys on the kind of the backboard, you know what I mean? Those late rounds, CFAs, where those guys fit to start, sort of working back to front, where we all know where the good players are, but the critical job and the job of the really good teams in this league, and hopefully we do the same thing, is finding value in the middle rounds, those 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks, of finding guys that can contribute to your team. So they're in that process. So the scouting process is well on its way. The coaches will jump in as we get back to work here in February. We start with the free agency because that comes first. And so whatever the targeted free agency process will be, we'll get our guys to evaluate. We'll understand what's available to us, what the cap situation is, where we can spend money. And then again, with a new GM coming in, what their process is and what they expect from the coaching staff. And those are all things that, it's all still going to be collaborative in that approach. So you still want coaches' opinions. You still got to have the pro people doing their part. But we got to find, what the free agency plan is. How are we targeting? Who are we targeting? The character is critically important. What kind of person are they? What kind of football character do they have? We need leadership, guys that got leadership ability and guys that can help lift our locker room, from what we already have. And then the sort of, as you finish that free agency part, you sort of get your college lists. And when you get through February, you start the college process right about the combine, because that free agency period is like mid-March, it opens, but all the work got to be done before that from the coaching side. And then you get to the combine time is usually when you get your college list and you start that process. And you start evaluating, you're at the interviews at the combine. We get a bit of a head start because, me and Denard and Nick are going to go down to the East West and the Senior Bowl sort of back to back. We got a couple guys coaching in both games. So it's kind of our first introduction to what's out there and what it looks like. And you get a chance to go watch them in person, and you get to do some interviews and some meeting with them. That's important. And so you hope by the time you get to the combine, you got a pretty good feel for the class, at least the starting point. And then now you're in March, as you get through the combine into March, now you're really drilling down. You're bringing in top 30 visits. You're doing Zoom calls. You're grading the tapes and ranking the players. And that area in March is pretty important. And that runs into April, and then you get to about 2.5 weeks out from the draft, and you start sort of the mock drafting, the scenarios, working through all those things, setting the board. All that stuff happens as you get closer to the draft. But it's a busy time. There's a lot of evaluation that goes on from the pro and college side. And then on top of that, we split the day as a coaching staff every day. Half the day is kind of scheme eval and scheme research, and then half the day is personnel related. So that's sort of how we work on a daily basis, because you got to get your self-scout stuff done. What was good, what was bad, where to improve, what other things are we going to do different? Do we have any other schemes we want to explore? Who are we going to study? You always study in the off season the teams that are doing things well, and you study what they do and how they do it. So it's a lot of work. It's the fun part. Now you're out of the game planning process and into the evaluation process, both of yourself, of your offense, defense, and special teams, and then now evaluating free agents and college players. So it's fun. It's a fun time of year.
So you guys already know what you're doing with the first pick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Locked in. You can just take the rest of the season off. I mean,
we're good
done.
to go.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I just said the thing about the draft and having the first pick is that we also have picks in the top of every round, outside
that's
of
right. Yeah.
So, everyone gets enamored with the first one, but we have a chance to add a really good class of players where we pick at overall, and there's always trade possibilities as you get in, especially in the later rounds, the second and third round, there's always opportunities to pick up more picks and more players. And so we're going to do everything we can to try to get the best players and the most good players we can get. But picking at one allows you also the flexibility for the rest of the draft where you're picking at the top of every round. It's a critical part of that. It's not just the first pick. Everyone gets stuck there, which is right. It's there. That's an incredible opportunity to pick a great player. But there's also a lot of draft flexibility and capability of really improving your football team.
So when you're picking those players, when I was doing my research on all these GM candidates you guys had in, listening to them on podcasts and in articles, something that almost all of them kept bringing up were, here are my non-negotiables about evaluating players, drafting players, signing players. What are Brian Callahan's non-negotiables? And you can take that to mean really whatever you'd like it to mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're looking for the makeup is critically important. I think you have certain players you assume can play football. They've, especially in the free agency, like they've proven it. You can watch the tape. But the other part of it is, are they smart? How smart are they? And I'm not talking about and just general intelligence. I'm talking about
their ACT score,
football intelligence. Do they have instincts? Do they have feel? So you really want smart. You want tough. You want consistent, dependable players. Like that's a really, it's broad, but that's what it is. You want high character guys. You want guys that have leadership qualities. You want guys at the end of the day absolutely love playing football. And they love playing football because they love football, not because of what football brings for them, what it does for them, which might be kind of hard to differentiate for some people, but it's the importance of they play football because they love playing football, that their interest and focus is on making the team better and helping the team win versus trying to make the most money possible. Now, those things can work together. There's definitely guys, they all want to make the most money possible. We all do. But there's a certain part of when they come in the building, what do they like? Is it their focus is solely on helping our team get better and playing great football? Those are the kind of personalities, that we're looking for, both in college players and in pro players. Those are things that you have to have if you want to have a good football team.
So let's narrow that into quarterback. And this is the last question. That's the biggest question this offseason, right? What do you guys do? And there are a handful of options. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how maybe not the best options, but something that you said offhand to me at the facility at some point in the last 2 months. Every year we come into a quarterback draft class in particular, and it's either, oh, it's a great year or it's a terrible year, right? There's no perceived average year. And even in terrible years, there's usually a guy that can play. When you have the first pick, you have the opportunity to find that guy. What is there an idealized version of quarterback that you talk all the time about fitting your scheme to the strengths of a guy, but when you get to go pick the guy, you can try to find the ideal version of quarterback for your system. So what does that look like?
Well, I think the things we talked about earlier are what I always look for is, the decision making, the timing, and the accuracy. Those are the things that can they do those three things? Are they able to translate? Now, rookie quarterbacks and rookie players generally don't have all of that at one point. It's just not how they're just not ready. They don't do the same things in college football that they're required to do in the NFL. So you have to project that sometimes. Sometimes it's clear as day. Sometimes you look at Joe Burrow playing at LSU and you go, yep, that's it. He's got it. There's no problems there. We all know. We can all see. We all have eyes. And sometimes you have to project a bit. I would say that there's some people that, if you look at Caleb Williams, for example, that, does he play on time? Sometimes, but did he ever have to in college? When they extend plays, is there guys open that they should have thrown to, or are they just looking to make bigger plays? Those are all things you got to project, and you have to be able to. That's where knowing the player is really critical. And that's why at every touch point you get in the offseason, you have to make the most of it, because that's why these all-star games are so important. That's why we have somebody coaching in one of them. That's why I'll be at both of them. That's when you're looking at quarterbacks, you have to look at so many factors. But the most important part, again, is that makeup. Are they able to take the coaching and improve where they have to improve as an NFL player. I think you look at Josh Allen, and I'm not comparing Josh to anybody, but Josh's journey was a little bit different, where he made, pretty incremental improvements and learned how to play. And now he plays, his decision-making, timing, and accuracy are as good as anybody's in football. And he has an incredible skill set that raises the level of everyone around him because of his ability to create. But that's not the first thing you look for. You look for guys that are, one, I think you got to be accurate. What kind of decision maker are you? Those are the things you start with. And then you see where, as you get to know the players over the course of the process, are they able to improve? Are they able to do some of those things that maybe they haven't been asked to do in college that they're going to have to do in the NFL? Protection knowledge, being able to understand where their problems are. What are your answers? How do you fix problems in the moment? And that's what you're looking for, I think, over the course of evaluating quarterbacks in the offseason.
So decision-making, timing, and accuracy, like you said, typically it's hard to find a guy that has all three immediately. Are they tiered in your mind? Are they ranked in terms of maybe what's hardest to find or what's hardest to fix once you're trying to develop them? Or is it all equal?
It depends on the player. And that's that's probably a wishy-washy answer, but it depends on the player. It depends on what other skills they have, what other physical traits that may transcend potentially one of those things. But I would say, generally speaking, you can see accuracy.
Right.
It's hard to teach accuracy. It's one of those things that a quarterback generally has. You see it very clearly on tape. You also know when a quarterback is inaccurate. Those are things that you see. And some of it, it's not
impossible to fix, right? I think this is a misnomer for some people, is that you can't fix accuracy. Either have it or you don't.
You can fix it because a lot of accuracy has to do with, again, what are they seeing? So what kind of decisions are they making? And then the other part of it is a lot of it's with quarterback play is always going to be kind of ground up, right? What's their footwork? Do they need to fix their footwork? Can their footwork improve their timing? Yes, absolutely. If your footwork is disciplined, you improve your timing. When you improve your timing, you can improve your accuracy because guys are getting the ball when they're supposed to, as opposed to late in the down or second windows that aren't really there. Those are all the things that you look at. Yes, you can improve accuracy. It generally has to do with improving your footwork, because that's going to allow the quarterback to have a sense of what the timing is, and the best offenses, the best passing games, generally speaking, are the ones that are the most disciplined in terms of their spacing, their timing, like guys being where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, and then the ball being there when it's supposed to be there. That's what good offense looks like generally. And then there comes a time when you need talent to take over, when everything breaks down or guys are covered, because guys get covered. You're not going to scheme open everybody every time. Guys are covered. Sometimes they don't win. The other team has a lot of money invested in their defense too. It's just the way it works. When that happens, what are you then able to do? Do you have great ability to move in the pocket and scramble? Can you hold the ball and find a window late? And then when you do get out on the perimeter, can you make, your eyes down the field, and can you make big plays off of off script plays? And so everything sort of fits off of those things. And again, it's all very individualized. Like, what is this player capable of doing? And where do I see accuracy versus timing versus decision making, and then the ability to make plays and raise the level of the offense. And I think all that stuff fits in the package. And there's not like a one size fits all. It's all based on, what is the player's strengths in general, and then how do you best work around it and or improve it.
That's great. But we're way over time. Usually my default at this point is to tell you, hey, where can folks read you? Plug your show, your podcast. So I don't know. You got any freelance work going on right now people need to read?
No freelance work for me at this point. Okay.
Check out the Brian Callahan show, I guess. The OTP. Is it fair to say can we hear from you at the Senior Bowl when you stop in?
Yeah, I'll be down there. I'll definitely be available.
We're going to kidnap you to do 15 minutes to talk about something. We'll figure out when. We
can catch up down there. Maybe we could talk about somebody who had a cool practice. We could talk about some players.
Yes, real player talk.
Yeah,
would be awesome. Be good.
All right. I'll be down there. I'll be available a bit. I'll be at both the East West and the Senior Bowl.
Well, fantastic. That's Brian Callahan, folks. Way more than we were owed. So appreciate you tremendously for your time and your insight. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Appreciate you asking me. We get a chance to visit on some things and in a different setting than a press conference, and it was fun. I enjoyed it.